Welcome to our Congressional Award community. My name is Erica Heiss. I serve as the National Director of the Congressional Award Foundation, joining you from Washington, D.C. Thank you everyone for joining us. We have a very exciting webinar for everyone today. We're so excited to be speaking about esports and gaming, everything surrounding career, health, and wellness, made possible by our friends at ESA, the Entertainment Software Association, and AHA, American Heart Association. Gaming has become increasingly popular within our community. And we found that there are numerous conversations, questions, and dialogues surrounding esports, gaming, the impacts, the benefits, and the opportunities within this space. So we thought that this would be the perfect opportunity to welcome Congressional Award participants, some of our parents, our advisors, to learn more, ask questions. And of course, today's webinar is being recorded to be sent out to all of our current participants and our networks to learn more and engage with us in this very important conversation. So to begin, I just want to acquaint everyone with the chat box. You all have been a part of this before. You've seen it. Already seeing some welcome messages in there. Let us know where you're coming from, where you might be joining us from, because we would just love to say hello to you, and we want this to be interactive. I want to thank all of our Congressional Award participants who actually submitted questions in advance so that we can cover some of those topics today, because we have such an outstanding panel. And anyone looking for their personal development hours, because again, this is continual education and opportunity exposure for learning new things. We tell all of our participants always be a beginner at something, right? So if you're learning with us today, this will count as one of your personal development activities. So please look for a follow-up email from us on that. I see Elizabeth joining us from Arlington. Thank you so much. So we have a lot to cover in this hour and some wonderful guest speakers that we're so thankful to have with us today. So we're going to dive right into our first segment, and it is my pleasure to introduce Miss Missy Foxman from the Entertainment Software Association, our board member and friend, and who has made today's programming possible. Missy, welcome.
Thank you so much, Erica. I am so honored to be here today, and I'm here on behalf of the Entertainment Software Association, which represents the U.S. video game industry, and our members are everybody's favorite video game company. I'm also here as a board member of the Congressional Award Foundation, which I can't say enough good things about. This is an amazing student achievement program that is around goals in volunteerism, character development, and physical fitness. It is the esports phenomenon is one that is just growing by leaps and bounds. I was talking to Erica a little while ago about 2,000 colleges and universities have esports programs right now. Some of them are varsity, some of them are club programs, but there is a lot of enthusiasm around esports. And I have to sort of do a shout out to my organization, and the Higher Education Video Game Alliance did a study last year on the benefits of video games in K through 12 education, and esports was a big part of it. And this link to the study will be available in the toolkit that the Congressional Award Foundation provides.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So I want to just unpack that for a minute. But first, I just want to say we have participants from South Dakota, New York, West Virginia, Florida, California, I'm seeing Missouri and Mississippi. So I just want to say hello. We see you. Continue to chat with us and let us know where you are, because again, this is really for everyone. It's a national, it's a global conversation, and we're just excited to see people from all over the country joining us for this conversation. So thanks, everybody. So Missy, just to unpack a little bit, can you just tell us a little bit more about what is ESA? You're here in Washington, D.C., you're connecting with Congress, you have so many wonderful members, and I just have to say, we have some Congressional Award participants that are in the gaming industry, and then we have a lot of kids, a lot of young people who are already mapping out their career path into this industry. So what can you tell us about that? Just,
you know what, we love to hear that, and come on, bring it on. We want all of you to study up on your STEM subjects and your liberal arts degrees. We need all of you. We need all of that talent, and we want it in the video game industry. There are so many unique opportunities. The Entertainment Software Association, we're the voice and advocate for the US video game industry. And what we do is we, talk to policymakers at the state and federal levels about, and international to some degree, but, about issues that are important to our industry. And I see Congressman Obernolte is on, so I don't want to take up any more time. Can we go ahead and introduce you, Congressman?
Sure. Sorry, I don't mean to jump in.
No, it's my pleasure to introduce you. The Congressman Overnolte represents California's 8th Congressional District, and he really brings a unique perspective to this discussion as an engineer, an expert in artificial intelligence, and the founder of a successful video game company, which you did in college, which I can't even imagine. So we are huge fans of yours here at ESA because you are also a leading member of the Congressional Video Game and Esports Caucus. So thank you so much for making time to join us today.
Of course. And it's an honor to be here talking to people who share my passion for not just video games, but esports. I wanted to take a minute and tell you about how I got into video gaming and esports as a career, just because I think that there are a lot of really striking parallels to when I did it to where we are right now. So when I was a freshman at Caltech, where I did my undergraduate degree, I was in our computer science department, and I saw a want ad on our bulletin board looking for an expert programmer at a certain microprocessor. And I thought to myself, wow, I could use some extra money, and I actually know how to program that chip. And so I responded to the ad, and it turned out to be a company that was working with this little known firm in Japan that few people had ever heard of. They had this outlandish name. They called themselves Nintendo. And they were just introducing their first game machine in North America, the Nintendo Entertainment System. And they were looking for English-speaking programmers to help them write games. And so they signed me up, and I was very excited. And I remember vividly, I called my mother and I said, "Mom, you can't believe they're going to pay me to write video games." And I'll never forget this. She said, "That sounds great, honey, but wouldn't you rather do something that might have a future for you?" Because at the time, it wasn't clear at all that one could actually have a career and make a living writing games. And that was never my plan. I wanted to be a researcher, so I went on to UCLA and was working on my doctorate in artificial intelligence and just continued to write game software just to put myself through school. And then something happened that changed my whole life. One of the games that I'd written for the Sega Genesis, an NFL game, called NFL 95, went platinum, as we say in the industry, meaning it sold over 1 million copies. And I remember vividly getting that first sales statement and looking at it and thinking, wow, Mom, you actually can make a living writing video games. And that led to a whole career for me. I've been in the industry 30 years. My company still has 29 employees. We do console development for platforms like PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo Switch. We do mobile platforms for Android and iOS phones. And it's been a wonderful career for me. So here's the kind of the takeaway. The societal norms back then that thought that video games might not be something that you could make a living doing are still prevalent today, because we look at emerging technologies, not just in arenas like esports, but also in emerging user interface technologies like virtual reality and augmented reality. And we're really on the precipice of a brand new world when it comes to unifying storytelling with interactive video gaming, and when it comes to kind of immersing people in a virtual environment and in a larger sense, connecting people together. So, when you hear someone talk to you about what video games are just for kids, esports, that's not a real sport, think about the incredible potential that these new immersive digital technologies have for connecting our world and connecting us as people in ways that we have never been able to do before. And I really firmly believe that it has the potential to change the world. So it's a very exciting time to be getting into the industry. And I really deeply admire people who are taking that plunge. And I'm really kind of envious, because now my career has turned. I have to be in Congress. I don't get to do that anymore. And I'm envious, of you getting in on the ground floor of this, this incredible time in the world of esports. So I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here today. Thank you for your passion and for what you're doing, and let you know that we have all been there, and this is what emerging technologies look like. There's a lot of doubt, because no one knows exactly where the industry is going, but you need to believe in the potential of what you're doing, and you too can eventually change the world. So I want to thank you very much for the opportunity to be here and talk to you this afternoon.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. And by the way, Missy has like one of the coolest jobs ever. I mean, look at this tremendous industry that she's representing here in Washington and across the nation. But Congressman, you have a pretty cool job as well. So I want to share with our students who are, again, coming in from all parts of the country, and for all of our wonderful parents and advisors and teachers that are joining us as well. Can you share with us just a little bit about your district in particular and what you're doing here on Capitol Hill?
Well, I represent the 8th District of California. It is the largest district in California and one of the largest in the entire United States. It goes from just north of Palm Springs all the way north almost to Lake Tahoe. So it's very rural. It's very challenging to represent because it takes me about 9 hours in the car to drive one direction across my district. So if you believe, as I do, that part of your job means meeting with your constituents and listening to what they have to say, it can be very challenging. Serving in Congress has been an incredible honor. I love the people I serve with. I love the policy that that we pursue. I think that from the standpoint of a computer scientist like myself, it's a really interesting time to be in Congress because we are considering some really weighty issues with incredibly important implications for the future of technology and the future of our society. So, for example, one of the things that I think have to deal with in the next couple of years is the issue of digital privacy. To finally unwind this moral idea of who owns our data. If someone collects data about us, who has the right to use that? Who has the right to charge money for it? Do we still have the right to exercise ownership over it? So I was deeply involved in the crafting of the California Consumer Privacy Act, which is in the United States the most far-reaching piece of legislation on digital privacy. And I firmly believe that we need to have the federal government preempt that space and set one set of rules and regulations for digital privacy for anyone who does business in the United States. I think, first of all, it's very appropriate for Congress to do that because it's so obviously related to interstate commerce. But I also think it's important because we can't allow a patchwork quilt of 50 different state regulations to exist. If we do that, the companies that will be able to navigate that space are just the big companies, and the companies that will struggle are the small businesses and the entrepreneurs, like I was 30 years ago. And we don't want to have that barrier to competition. So I really think that that's something that Congress is going to have to focus on over the next couple of years. And then there are other important issues like antitrust in the digital space. What do we do when companies get so large and so pervasive? Is that anti-consumer? Is it anti-competitive? Or is it good for society, or is it both? And what role does Congress have to play in regulating that? And also, this brand new issue of the spread of disinformation. To what degree does government have an obligation to regulate that? How do you promote the idea that speech ought to be truthful alongside the idea that we have First Amendment rights and we should honor free speech regardless of what's in it or where it comes from? Those are two ideas in tension, and our digital universe is right at the middle of that. So it's a very interesting and important time to be a computer scientist in Congress.
That's amazing. Well, like I said, two unbelievably cool jobs that you have. You mentioned entrepreneurship. We have students representing ages 14 through 24 on today's webinar. And we have a lot of students who are looking at this industry thinking, how do I make my way into this? I love video games. I'm really into esports. I am thinking about being a developer of I have a lot of questions here from students asking, I want to develop a game. I want to, be able to write this and what do I do? So if you're really speaking to a 14 or 15-year-old student in high school right now, what are some of the things that they can do to prepare, not just, STEM, talking about pathway to career, but also you have some entrepreneurship in you that takes risk-taking, preparation, dreaming, leaping, all those wonderful things. What advice would you give to students at that age?
I get asked that question all the time because I've had 30 years in the industry. So I've done thousands of job interviews with people. And so a lot of times we'll talk to school groups, and that's the question I get asked most often. And the answer that I always give is, if you are passionate about making games, then go build something. Go build something that you're passionate about. And I promise you that, well, I promise you two things. First of all, I promise that you'll be embarrassed to show it to people after you're done, because we learn by doing, right? So your first efforts are not going to be incredibly graceful, but you're going to learn a lot. And the second thing that I promise is that we will take it seriously when we look at what you built, because we have all been there. And by building things, we can tell what not only what you're passionate about, but we can also tell that it matters enough to you that you spent your free time learning how to do it and then doing it. And that's incredibly important. I would much rather look at someone that has no formal education in software engineering or video game development, that has taught themselves to program out of a book and built something, even if it's ugly. If it plays well, which it will if you care about gaming, it could be ugly, it could be clunky, but you had the passion to do it. I've hired many people like that, and I'll take someone in that camp, every day over someone with a degree from, like a Full Sail or even like a UCLA, in computer science, that doesn't have that same passion. So that's my advice. Go build something that you're passionate about.
Even if it doesn't look pretty out of the box.
And it won't, and that's fine. That's fine.
I love that. That's really a wonderful inspiration for our students. And thank you for all that you do, by the way. What a tremendous career. I am dating myself by saying this, but I just want to bring it back again. I am a kid, who was built on Nintendo, right? So I remember Super Mario Brothers very clearly, and I could save the princess in one guy without using any warp zones.
Ooh,
so anybody
impressive.
who knows what that means, thank you very much. But now I am a parent. I have a 14-year-old. I watch her playing, and the creativity that comes with it is incredible. And of course, the gaming industry and some of the things that it's produced over the years and what it's coming out with now, I am so amazed. So that is my claim to fame. I'm seriously considering putting it on my resume or in my bio or somewhere.
You ought to.
Today it felt good to say that. Well,
I'll tell you something else. If you're ever in Washington, D.C., come by my office, and I have a full-size Galaga arcade cabinet, because Galaga was my game in the 1980s, dating myself. And we've got a little perpetual trophy. If you can beat my high score in Galaga, we'll give you the perpetual trophy. But
I'm coming for you,
it has not been done yet. So
I'm coming for you, Jake.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I love it. Well, I think challenge accepted, and we'll be calling your scheduler. So
all right,
fabulous.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
All right, thanks everyone.
All right,
it's an honor to talk to you.
Missy, let's talk a little bit more about ESA's partnership with American Heart Association as we launch into this wonderful next segment that we have. And I see we have Congresswoman Stephanie Bice and Congressman Don Beyer. And so excited to start to incorporate some of these health conversations.
Absolutely. Such a great lineup of legislators you have here. So when ESA learned about the American Heart Association's Revive program, we were so excited that such a well-respected organization was taking an interest in esports and people who love competitive video game play. The American Heart Association's Revive program encourages student esports programs and provides resources and access to science-based guidance on physical and mental wellness for esports players. The AHA connects students, creators, and video game streamers to spread the message about heart health to fellow students and other gamers. This work really complements what the video game industry is already doing to promote healthy gameplay and healthy games. Gamers. We're happy to partner with the American Heart Association and share this wonderful work that they're doing with our friends here at the Congressional Award. So thanks to everybody.
Awesome introduction. We are talking about some of the connections between health and wellness and gaming and esports and what that brings to our young people specifically. So I'm so really excited to launch into this next segment. One, I first want to recognize Representative Stephanie Bice from Oklahoma's 5th Congressional District. We have had the pleasure of working with you before through our Power Lunch series, but it's so wonderful to see you with us today for our webinar. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Before I move into the rest of the introductions, again, same question. We have a lot of students joining us today from all over the country. Can you share with us just a little bit about your district in Oklahoma?
Sure. I am a freshman member of Congress, just like Jay, and I represent Oklahoma's 5th Congressional District, which is actually the Oklahoma City metro area. And I have been introduced to esports actually through my daughter, who is very active and engaged in the esports community on her college campus. And it's been certainly a fascinating journey for me being a parent, learning about the importance, but also the excitement that surrounds some of the things that either she's working on or that are happening in the community.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, we are joined here today by Dr. Yolandra Hancock with American Heart Association, but I'm telling you, in reading your bio, you're also a hero, literally. You're a practicing pediatrician. You are a board member on American Heart Association, a professor at the Milken Institute of Public Health at GW University, among many other things. And we're so thankful that you had the time to share your expertise with us today. So welcome. If you would please just say a little bit about your role as well to our students. We'll work through the rest of our introductions here.
Absolutely. So my most important job is that of mommy. I am the proud mother of Amara, my 9-year-old, who you may see passing here and there. She has really gotten me more involved in gaming because of her interest in it. I have the honor of serving as a pediatrician. This is my 20th anniversary of having graduated from medical school. Go Bruins.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm also a tried and true Bruin from UCLA. I have the opportunity to work with the American Heart Association now as a member of their executive board, but I have worked with them in terms of health policy and health education over the past, over a decade now. So I'm honored to now have an official title within the organization, but it's truly been an honor, and for them to now, for us, because I'm now a part of the team, to step into this space, it really shows how innovative the American Heart Association is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, I wouldn't think to tie these things together right off the bat, but it makes perfect sense. So we have so many young people, and, speaking as a parent as well, but I'm a Girl Scout leader. I'm heavily involved in the schools here in Virginia. And I know one of the number one things that I am asked from other parents are, hey, my son or daughter plays a lot of video games. I know that there are benefits there, but I do want to make sure that we're making healthy decisions, that we are promoting good health and activity and physical fitness and so on and so forth. So I want to talk a little bit about the tie, right? So what are some of those benefits that we can see through esports, through gaming, physically, that we want to talk about today from with your medical background?
Absolutely. I think one of the first things that the American Heart Association wants to do is address some of the stigma around gaming and esports. Well, I know for myself, my baby brother is a gamer. He actually proved my mother wrong in actually having a career in gaming, but I had judgment. I'd see him come home after work and he'd jump right on the video game. And I'm like, don't you have anything better to do than sit in front of a video game and play? But that was me with my bias and my stigma, not having yet looked at the data. And what we know now from studies here in the United States, information that has been collected across the globe, is the benefit of gaming. We know that when you play video games, it helps in terms of stress relief. It helps in terms of bringing your heart rate down. Your stress hormone cortisol comes down when you play. We've seen studies that show improvements in depression and anxiety when people are engaged in sports. And what I always say is that when we put a judgment on one form of sport and not the others, like I used to run track and somehow people put less value on track than football, we're now in the 21st century, we have to equate whether you are putting on equipment and going out on a field or putting on equipment and in the space of your home or in an arena. This is no different in terms of strategy and the way that your mind has to work to navigate through these spaces. And so we really have to recognize the benefits of gaming, not just for children, but for adults as well. We've heard a lot coming out of the pandemic about the challenges that people have dealt with from the mental health standpoint and how effective playing video games has been. And on a personal note, as a pediatrician, parents have actually prescribed video games, particularly for my children who are dealing with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. There has been a lot of information showing that children can improve their ability to focus by a significant amount when they're allowed to play video games. And so it's changed how I practice, how I recommend when we talk about screen time in pediatrics. We usually say no more than 2 hours, but that does not take into consideration that for some of our children, this is not only a hobby, but either a future or current career and or sport. And we have to really place the value that it deserves.
Well said. That's incredible. That is a lot of information that I honestly did not know. Congresswoman Bice, tell us, what are your feelings on this? What's your connection? I know you have a lot, and part of it is your experience working on the Cyber Innovative Technologies Committee as well. So tell us what your thoughts are on this.
Well, first of all, I want to reiterate what Dr. Hancock said. It is, I think, an eye-opening discussion because during the pandemic, our young people were really locked away, and esports gave them an outlet. It gave them an opportunity to connect. It gave them an outlet to be able to be with their friends, to meet new friends in sort of a unique way. And so even though there was a lot of isolation, from a mental health standpoint, there were huge benefits to gaming and particularly the esports. The other thing I think is really important is that to discuss is the fact that it's collaboration, it is creativity, it is problem solving, it is critical thinking skills, all of those things that are hugely beneficial for young people. And sometimes they're not getting it in a classroom. So the ability for them to be on a computer and learning some of these things is incredibly powerful. And with the pandemic, I think parents learned a little bit more about it and understood the dynamics. They formed relationships with people they may not have known. I learned a little bit about Twitch, which I was not familiar with about before the pandemic. But as it translates to other things, I think that there are incredible opportunities for young people who have a passion for development, whether it's software development, gaming development. My oldest daughter is now an MIS major. She loves web development. So looking at the skills that you're utilizing and applying them to other things. And from a national security perspective, I sit on the House Armed Services Committee, and I was incredibly honored to be put on our new cybersecurity information services, information technologies committee. And, what was fascinating to me is I was visiting the Air Force Base that is right next to my district, Tinker Air Force Base. And what I found out is a group of software engineers created essentially a simulation for a certain type of a vehicle that they were going to be utilizing in the field. You can, if you think about flight simulators, which may have been popular, 20 years ago, those are making a comeback. And they're incredibly useful tools from a national security perspective to be able to teach our airmen and guardians and others how to fly aircraft. When you're looking at it from those angles, it sort of opens up the door and the possibilities for our young people to look at careers in those fields which are incredibly important, giving them that opportunity.
Yes. So you touch upon a few interesting pieces for us at Congressional Award, which is, our program is promoting passion. Like, we want students to explore new things, to find their passion. A lot of our students are finding that through gaming, 100%, and all the personal development it brings to them, everything that they're learning, the professional pathways and opportunities. But we also are promoting 100% civic engagement, voluntary public service, ways to contribute, ways to give back. What an amazing thing for our students to be doing within this industry that can actually apply in that very way. And
one of the things that I learned from having a conversation with my daughter about the esports clubs that she's a part of is that many of these clubs are finding nonprofit organizations, either locally or nationally, putting on tournaments and then donating the proceeds back to their local chapters of these nonprofit organizations. So there's civic engagement, there's a lot of fun, there's, camaraderie. I mean, all of the things that you want for kids is really happening in these circles.
I love that. Dr. Hancock, what are your thoughts on this? You talk about something so important, which is the connectivity. We're connecting with others. I think we are just like genetically wired to connect with others. And for a lot of us, there's been isolation, especially through the pandemic, which we'll talk a little bit more about in the next segment. But the opportunity, I'm seeing a lot in the chat from our students saying, I made friends. I got to meet people. And especially if I'm a little bit shy and maybe that doesn't come as naturally to me, how does that benefit these young people?
Absolutely. Certainly prior to the pandemic, there's the opportunity for children to connect and young adults to connect in this space, but it became even more critically important after the pandemic hit. We know that because of isolation, that further impacted the mental health of our young people. We saw a 40% increase in anxiety and in depression as a result of the pandemic. So there being a safe space for children, not only to be able to interact, but to develop team building skills, to develop problem skills. So it isn't just them by themselves, but it's working collaboratively with others in terms of building. I had not fully appreciated that until my daughter started playing Roblox. I actually am on it now because I wanted to be able to experience what she was going through. And so I'm in there with her, building rooms and visiting people and adopting pets. And it teaches a level of responsibility. Like, she's thinking through things. She's really critically analyzing what she's doing, but she's able to do it with others. And certainly for children, to your point, who are shyer, who may not necessarily feel as comfortable making those connections. My daughter and I just had a conversation about her being an introvert and some of the challenges that she has in connecting with others. And I'm an extrovert. So I'm like, what are you talking about? The fact that there is a safe space for her to not only be able to connect with others, but for her to thrive in a space that builds so many of these skills. It certainly is something that parents should, and pediatricians to that point, should encourage their children to participate in.
Yeah, 100%. And I do want to mention this with you, Dr. Hancock and Congresswoman Bice, especially in talking about diversity. We talk about this a lot, especially in STEM. Okay, so just starting from a gender perspective, we know that not as many women, right, are embarking upon those career paths from a very early age. And then talking about racial and cultural representation within this industry, I think is really important to note, because we have a lot of young people coming from all sorts of backgrounds that are, maybe just toe dipping into this field right now, but are thinking about, I want to see people that look like me represented within this industry. And I also want to come in and leave my mark. Congresswoman, what do you say to that?
Well, that's exactly right. Having a daughter that has ventured into this realm, I see it firsthand that she is oftentimes one of the only females in the room. But she's also encouraging to the other ladies that happen to join her. And the more you promote it, the more you talk about it, the more interest people may have. And so whether it is gender, racial, that diversity, I think grows really organically in many ways. And you mentioned, Dr. Hancock mentioned, developing relationships. And I think someone even in the chat space mentioned this. My daughter said to me when we were talking about the topic that it's interesting. She is an introvert as well, unlike her mother. And she said that when you go into the esports arena on the college campus, you'll oftentimes see someone sit down right next to someone else that they don't know and strike up a conversation. And the person in the chat room said it's a great starting point for them to develop a friendship. Is something that they have in common. And I think that's a really important point, that if you're an introvert, you tend to be a little bit shy, you tend to be a little bit reserved in approaching someone to have a conversation, but you have this instant connection. And I think that's so important. And so you know, you meet people from all walks of life. You meet, you know, you do have diversity, I think, in many of these, but it's also important. It's not only sort of diversity with women and certainly with minorities, but also there's a rural urban discussion that we need to have here, because I think we often forget about that. One thing that I learned is that in Oklahoma, there's a couple of small towns in the southeastern part of the state that happen to be really good at gaming. These are high schools that have developed their own gaming teams. And who would have thought? You normally think, well, they don't have high-speed internet access to be able to do some of the things that are required or have the graphics abilities. But in fact, that's not always the case. And so you're connecting not only different demographics, but racial and ethnic as well.
Wonderful. And I need to mention, first Iranian American elected to Congress. I buried the lead a little bit, but I mean, so what a wonderful, you know, representation in Congress for all these young people thinking, you know, I can be first. First of all, I could be first. How hard was it to be first?
Well, I don't know that I actually really thought about it from that context, being first, but I will say this, and I want to circle back to something that Jay Abramolchi said early on, and that is, I'm reminded of the Steve Jobs Stanford commencement speech. He said, "Do what you love." And I think that's sort of the key here, is that these young people love computer technology. They love creativity. And so when you find something in a pathway that you're passionate about, follow your heart, follow your gut, and do what you love.
I love that. Well said. Dr. Hancock, what any words on the diversity and the inclusion piece? And by the way, so many of our young people are interested in going into the medical field. We're going to need to have you come back. But what are your comments and thoughts on this as a leader within your field?
One, yes to coming back. Absolutely. You have full access to me. In terms of diversity and inclusion, I will tell you, my brother has worked in the gaming space for about 25 years. And he has almost always been the only one, or there may be one other Black person specifically with whom he's worked, and they usually worked in human resources. They weren't in the gaming space. And so I often talk to him about what it's like to be a Black man in the gaming industry. And he said sometimes it's very difficult. It's often full of sort of stereotypical ideas about who he is showing up in the space. He said sometimes he does struggle even within this community, because this is what it is. It truly is the build up of community. But as time has progressed, he does say that it has gotten better, that there have been more efforts in companies to make sure that there is a more diverse, not just employee pool, but also in terms of their focus. We know that there is a shift in terms of the demographics within the United States. And with that, it means making sure that all of the games, all of the spaces for esports that are created are reflective of this beautiful country. And I think that's what's going to be most important for anyone working in this space, is to really think through from an equity lens, what does it look like to be part of this community?
You are getting a lot of love in the chat, and thank you for saying that. And you know, I think just to encourage our young people to take those steps, to know that what you're doing, younger people behind you are going to be paying attention to. So know that you are a representative, that you yourself can be an advocate and a leader. I think that's so incredibly empowering. Thank you for that message. I want to thank both of you, Dr. Hancock, Congresswoman Bice. We greatly appreciate your time in sharing all of your thoughts and expertise on this particular issue. We're going to move now into more of the mental and emotional health space. The word Twitch was mentioned, and we're gonna unpack that a little bit. We're gonna find out exactly what that is, and we're gonna dive in here with Congressman Don Beyer, who I'm so excited to see representing where I am, actually, in Arlington, Virginia. So, Congressman, so great to see you.
Thank you, Erica. It's great to have some constituents on the line and old friends too.
Yes.
it's great to be with Stephanie and with Jay.
Well,
I don't get to know them very well yet because they're still freshmen, but I'm really looking forward to it.
well, we're all going to meet up for that video game challenge. So I
Okay,
think that's
great.
a date for sure.
That
Yes.
sounds wonderful.
Fabulous. So Congressman, we'll start with you. Again, young people from all over the country are joining us here on this webinar. So if you can please share just a little bit about your district in Virginia and a little bit about yourself and what you do here on Capitol Hill.
Sure. Other than play video games, because
Other
I have found that this political career is a terrible distraction and interruption from my video game. But whatever. So yeah, so I represent your home, Northern Virginia, which is the area right across the street from Washington, D.C. So I have National Airport in Mount Vernon and National Cemetery where John Kennedy's buried and all that good stuff. I am embarrassedly the most spoiled member of Congress because without traffic, it only takes me 15 minutes to get from my home to the Capitol. So many people like Stephanie, Jay has got to fly all the way to California and back every week. I get to go home every week.
That is a beautiful thing.
And I love the invitation to be with you. I got a chance to visit ESA's headquarters a couple years ago, pre-pandemic, which is the most amazing place. I thought about quitting Congress and trying to get a job at ESA because it looked like so much fun. And because I'm a gamer from way back, I grew up just doing all the board games and pencil games and chess and all that stuff. But when it got to the computer, I remember when I first discovered Tomb Raider, and I just disappeared from the family for a number of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was really good to teach me persistence because I often have to make the same move. I'd say, okay, this time I'm only going to make it 25 times, then I'm going to quit and go do something else. And usually about the 22nd time, I actually get it. I like to brag, quote unquote, that I'm the oldest person I've ever met that beat Halo. That is probably not true, but no one's provided a counterexample. And by the way, when you're taking on the boss, the last big guy you have to beat, it's a great example of the need for persistence. Because again, you have to be really patient and try again and again. I raised my 3 girls sitting on my lap doing video games from age 3 or so, all the way through until you sort of ran out of educational support. And so one of them right now is a senior software engineer for a nonprofit. She's, for whatever reason, she got deeply into Minecraft. The other one is a policy expert, but she's played KOTOR, which is Knights of the Old Republic. It was Game of the Year in probably 2008 or something like that. She's beaten it 9 times. I say, great, she should play a different game. But whatever, there's such comfort in beating this game again and again. And I now find gamifications everywhere in my life. Like I was in Geneva this summer with Zero French, so I'm trying to do French on Duolingo. Wouldn't you know this completely gamified? Or my little calorie counter, gamified. We find you want to motivate your employees, trying to find some way to give them gamification rewards, and even in the exercise apps. So, and I think, of course, what we're seeing is that scientists are turning gamification and games into a great way to collect research. So, I'm all in. I think it's a wonderful. One of my friends is head of the Motion Picture Association of America, and I love teasing him that entertainment, electronic software, games is way bigger than films in America.
Oh, yeah.
So just trying to make them feel insecure.
Well, Congressman, some of these accolades really need to be added to your bio. So we'll talk to someone about that.
Change the Wikipedia page, right?
Yes, exactly. I do want to introduce you to Haley Baez, who is joining us from American Heart Association, and she leads the live stream fundraising initiative, but she is the pro. I mean, this is honestly, so if we're going to talk about Twitch, let's talk about it. Haley, tell us what you do, because every young person is going to be asking me for your contact information after this, and how they become, can they be, just following you around, and can you mentor them? It's going to be a lot. But
I love
please
it.
tell us all about you and how you came into this role and what it's brought to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And before I jump into that, I just want to comment on something that Congressman Beyer said, which really touched my heart, was hearing about your daughters and raising them just on your lap playing video games, because that's exactly how I was raised. My dad and I, that's how I originally got into video games, was from him, and he and I would spend time together. And I have very vivid, happy memories associated with those games that we would play together. And I think there's something to be said about being raised in an environment like that. And I think everybody who grew up playing video games always has that memory of, I remember when I first started my first video game, I remember where I was and what the mission was. And it just goes to show the power that those kinds of relationships have. But to start out of that's the beginning of my story when it comes to gaming. I'm a lifelong gamer, started very young. And it was when I met my now husband that I was introduced to the world of Twitch, which, if you're unfamiliar, is a live stream platform that originated as only video games and has since expanded to just live content in general, but still has a very strong presence in video games. And so I did that for 8 years as a full-time content creator. I loved every minute of it. I met some of the most incredible people. I watched people from my community get married and have kids and meet through my channel, and just the power of community that's associated with Twitch and gaming never ceases to impress me. And so I did that for nearly a decade. And then once I started having babies, I said, I think I want to try just doing something different and exciting, a little bit more stable. And so I found this opportunity at the American Heart Association, which, as we've talked about, we've taken such significant interest in this space. And it got me really excited to be a part of something like that. And, doing good and fundraising and the nonprofit world in general has a very organic home on Twitch. I think that this generation is so giving that it was exciting to be on board with that, and to know that I was doing something good with my time, and to help marry the world of, fighting heart disease and stroke and gaming and live streaming. And so there's a lot of power in this space, and I'm so excited to be a part of it and see all the good that gaming can do.
And it can, and I think that's what we're seeing. And so let's just talk about some of those benefits. And especially, I really want to bring us back to emotional and mental health. I think right now, one of the most critical conversations to have, especially with this age group. Again, we're working with 14 through 24-year-olds through the Congressional Award Program. A majority of our students are around 16 years old that are engaged in this sort of framework program. And we know that we need to continually provide opportunities to share, to learn, to grow in this very critical space around emotional and mental health. Can we talk about gaming, esports, and how it relates back to emotional and mental health, the benefits it can bring? We talked about connection, but let's just talk about that a little bit more. Congressman, what are your thoughts on this conversation here?
Well, I want to pile on with Haley and sitting on her father's lap, and my 3 daughters sitting on mine, because they were, I do think that as I get old and look back, those are some of the moments I treasure most. And I hope that they are with them too. But it's not just in person. It's nice when they're on their lap. But Mark Warner, who's the senior senator from Virginia and a dear friend, for years, while he would be campaigning all over the state, he'd dial in every night to do Call of Duty with his daughter. They'd be busy killing Nazis over the internet. And I think they really connected that way. So I think that's at least a part of the connectedness. The other deal too is, we talk about the epidemic of anxiety and depression among younger people today. More and more they're developing software through games that gives people the opportunity to lay some of that anxiety aside. For example, for me, I know this is going to sound a little weird, but some of these video games like Skyrim and Oblivion are the biggest worlds in the world. So if you want to stop thinking about yourself and wandering around all kinds of different worlds and meeting different people with different problems, it's a wonderful way to escape, the challenges or the depression or the downness of today.
I never thought about that. You're actually creating a whole new world, right? That you can kind of explore. Similar to writing, I mean, there's such a storytelling component, and there's such a control that you have in some of these games where you do get to create. My daughter has said to me on numerous occasions, like, Mom, look at the house I just built. It's our house. We're going to live here, and I have our bedroom and this kitchen. I mean, it's so detailed, and it's incredible. And of course, it's a pretty nice kitchen. And it's a good conversation because we're talking about connecting with family, and I'm seeing some people in the chat saying, yep, you know, I still play with my parents, or I still play with my little sister. The older sister just went off to college, but still plays with her little sister. That's incredible. Those are the connections that help us remain positive and have, you know, that feel good of home, even when you're going away to college. We actually see so many young people who are 18-ish leaving for the first time as a freshman, going off to college, and what a difficult transition that is. That first like 3 months, like right up until the holidays, which we're in right now, to have that video game connection or that gaming connection with their family. I mean, that's really helping them. Haley, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely that correlation. That's no secret between mental health and video games. And specifically, I think back to at the beginning of the pandemic, I remember it was aligned almost perfectly with the timing of the release of Animal Crossing New Horizons, which is, if you're not familiar, a game that is on the Nintendo Switch, and it is a very wholesome game where you hang out on an island and you get to chop down trees and build things. And it just exploded on Twitch, because I feel like that was a moment that people felt they could kind of get away from all the fear and anxiety that came with the pandemic and the unknown, because at that point, no one really knew what to expect with COVID. Everybody was on lockdown. Everyone was at home. And so this was almost an escape for people to rely on and go, okay, I can play this game with my friends in this world, an alternate reality, if you will, and relax and decompress. And I think that's the way that many people feel about both video games and streams as well, where they feel they can go into a stream and watch their favorite streamer play a game that they love and know that that's okay. I can count on this person and their content. They're going to be playing my favorite game. I can't wait to watch. And when they turn it on, it's just a way to relax and decompress from the day. And so when it comes down to stress reduction and all of those things, they're all so clearly tied in. And I think the important thing too really is the socialization of it, because video games are not solitary anymore. They are such a social experience now. And that goes to whether you're watching a stream or you're playing a game with friends, or it's an open world game or a competitive game. Single player games certainly are still there, but I think we're seeing more and more multiplayer opportunities, which in turn is leading us to have that social experience that we may not otherwise be getting in a world that has more and more become isolated with the state of the pandemic. And so hopefully, obviously, that changes and we can get back to doing more in-person things. But until then, I think this offers such a great option for people who are still craving that social engagement and interaction, which plays a direct part in the quality of mental health.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned, apparently you can meet your future spouse, future partner. Are you, are you invited to a lot of weddings now? Gaming weddings?
So we worked together in person. He was the one who introduced me to Twitch, my husband. But yes, people in my community I know have been dating and gotten married. And, you know, just the other day, one of them sent me a picture of his daughter being born. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's just a very surreal experience to know the power of these kinds of places on the internet for people and the communities that are built at the same time.
And that's really what it is. It's a community, and it feels that way. Yeah, for sure.
Erica, let me give you a pushback too, though, on the other side.
Okay.
Is when Civilization first came out, Sid Meier, let's see what year it must have been, like 1988, 1989, something like that. And it was so much fun to build your whole world and to make all these, like, I thought it was great practice for governing, you know, that every governor should do Civilization as you're doing the trade-offs and stuff. But I stayed up all night long to finish the world, and it wrecked the sleep the next day. So you've got to have it in balance. Remember that getting 8 or 9 hours of sleep is also.
Thank you for mentioning the balance. There are some questions in the chat about balance, and we've certainly gotten a few from parents in the pre-question opportunities. So what is the balance? How do we do that? You know, the word addiction is used, right? Because some of these can be a little bit addicting, depending on how you define that. Brooke, who's clearly after my own heart and in the chat mentioned Tetris is the first video game that she played. I literally, if I close my eyes, I can see Tetris in my mind sometimes because I just remember like, you know, just how it activated my mind. And it was hard for me to go to sleep because I would literally be thinking about Tetris. So how do we strike that balance? What does that look like? What does that healthy balance look like for parents, especially, or for teens that might be thinking, maybe I should go to bed. Maybe I've taken this too far.
No, my kids are grown. Haley, you probably have it right in front of you right now. So.
You know, my children are both very, it's funny because my daughter, we're speaking of Animal Crossing. So she's 4. And so she's watched me play. And so now she's taken my Switch and she's like, well, I want to play Animal Crossing. And it's been crazy just watching her learn the controls and go around the island and, you know, do all the fun, wholesome things. But that's a conversation that we've had to have as parents. Like, are we comfortable with her being introduced at such a young age to video games? And then what does that look like as she grows up? And I know that Dr. Hancock put in the chat this SAFE acronym of making sure you're getting enough sleep, taking the breaks that are needed on the eyes, this 20-20-20 rule, every 20 minutes, look away from the screen. I think those are all really healthy habits. And I think, especially for our children, I think it's all about balance, really. Like, you know, my husband and I were just talking about this the other day about how video games were a hugely integral part of his upbringing and his life. And yet he was also playing football and he was being engaged in outdoor activities and having time away from the screen. And so I think that it really is up to everybody's own situation, but just using your best judgment. And, you know, even for me, I have moments where if I'm looking at my phone and playing a game on my phone, I'm like, okay, I can feel my brain starting to shut down. I need to put the phone away and go touch some grass, right? Like I think it's just really keeping an eye on that and using your best judgment as a family, because I certainly can't make a judgment for someone else's kids and what they're doing. I can just know, okay, my daughter, when she's in front of a screen for more than 30 minutes, she starts acting out. Like, I'm not here for that. So that's not for little kids. It's not just for little kids either. That continues to affect people as they get older. So that would be my answer for that.
So for all the college freshmen out there, make sure you're also going to sleep and you're also waking up for that 8 a.m. class.
Yes. Go to class, breathe some fresh air, go outside.
Someone once said that an hour of sleep before midnight's worth 2 hours after midnight.
That I like that saying.
Yeah. One of my favorite, you know, adults, all of us, I'm sure, struggle with balance even now with our very busy lives. And I remember coming to some dinner one night, completely frustrated about how was I going to fit in the exercise and the sleep and the family time and do my job. And I complained to the woman sitting next to me at the dinner. And I said, how do you find the balance? And she said, simply the fact that you were aware of it and looking for it makes you way ahead of the game. I'm sure that then as a parent, as a mom or a dad, it's, you know, taking the responsibility to help look for that balance for your kids.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you all for this really meaningful conversation. We appreciate you, Congressman, and your time. Thank you for your all that you do for us on Capitol Hill as a constituent, and for the Congressional Award Program for AHA and ESA. We thank our partners as well. Dr. Hancock, we hope to see you again. Haley, amazing job. And I just want to say, through all these gaming conversations, as advocates, as you all are advocates and providing service, through the Congressional Award Program, we know that by giving back and participating in something larger than ourselves lifts our spirits and brings meaning and light and positivity to our students and to all of us as adults. So thank you for all that you are doing. And to Missy Foxman and all of our friends at ESA, thank you for making today possible. We are going to leave you all with a slide from Bethy Woodall, who will just link to our toolkit and some of our resources on our Congressional Award webpage for all of our students to continue this conversation and share those resources with friends. Thank you all so much, and we will see you all next time.